Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how you doing today?
Well, it's a beautiful spring evening. The sun is setting as we record. The clouds are turning pink, and I'm sitting inside talking into a computer. How are you?
I'm very similar, so thank you for asking. Yeah, we need to figure out a better schedule for this. It's fine during the winter when it's cold and miserable and dark. But like right now, I should be out riding my bike or, playing some stickball.
Are you recording this from the 1950s in New York?
Hughes knows it. So, Tom, last week, I don't remember which one of us said it, but you lamented the fact that there was nothing to talk about, and Ohio State ended up losing a quarterback. So, would you care to apologize for that?
Well, I went back and listened, and you were the one who actually said it's been a quiet week. We don't have a whole lot to talk about. So, because I was worried, I thought, oh no, was that me? No, it was you. So, would you like to apologize to the listeners and or to Ohio State's quarterback coaches and coaching staff?
You know what? I would not like to apologize. I'd apologize in person if we would get to maybe talk to them after the spring, like we normally have been able to. But since that scheduling hasn't been made available to us, I'm not apologizing for nothing. All right. So they made this bed, they can lie in it.
They're busy saving the world. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's very important, whatever they're doing.
I'm sure it is. And, when we'll find out what that is later when there's something to report about. Like you said, maybe they have cured the flu even better than it's already been cured. We'll get like an email in June like, hey, Ryan Day would like to talk to you about how he and Mike Yursich and Kevin Wilson have come up with a new flu shot. And we'll be like, wow, that's amazing. But could we also talk about the quarterbacks?
And meanwhile, the defensive coaching staff, remember the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Not there anymore. Thanks, Jeff Hafley.
Right. So, credit to these guys. So we can't fault them for that. But if we ever do get to talk to them, I'm sure we'll relay that to you guys on the show. And if you've been wondering why there's been nothing new from the coaches, it's because there's been nothing new from the coaches. But still, Tom, plenty to talk about with the transfer of Matthew Baldwin. And I don't know, maybe it was like 6 hours after, well, whenever it was, the show posted late Wednesday night. And then, of course, start tweeting it in the morning of Thursday. And, a few hours later, we get the news that Matthew Baldwin is transferring. Earlier that morning, I wrote, what's next for the Ohio State quarterbacks in terms of like, what do they do over the summer now with their practicing and how do they get better? And like the next day I was going to write the same thing, like what's next for the Ohio State quarterbacks? Because now there aren't as many of them. And so, what we find out from Matthew Baldwin in his statement is that this wasn't out of the blue. And he had been thinking about this, basically got homesick, wanted to play ball closer to home. And you see people saying it wasn't about being chased off by Justin Fields. And so many people have said it's not about Justin Fields. Tate Martell said it wasn't about Justin Fields. Dwan Mathis, the quarterback who was committed in the 2019 class to Ohio State and then flipped to Georgia, said it wasn't about Justin Fields. Matthew Baldwin says it's not about Justin Fields. But yet, had he won this job, Tom, is he transferring?
Let me answer your question with a question. Can you name a starting quarterback at a major Power 5 school who has transferred because he's homesick or some other reason? Because I can't think of anyone who is a clear-cut starter who has transferred. So the balance of probability suggests that playing time or the concern that there would be little to no playing time over the next couple of years probably factored into that decision in some way. We obviously were not privy to the internal discussions that Baldwin had with his family and with the coaching staff, but until I see a locked-in starting quarterback for a major program transfer somewhere else for something that's other than, seriously ill family member or something like that, that's a real obvious situation like that, yeah, I think you kind of always have to assume that's, no matter what people say, that always at least plays at least a role in that decision.
Yeah, because even if you're saying it's not about him, everything surrounds Justin Fields here. And you look at, like, they see Justin Fields as the reason why everybody is transferring. But, like, Tate Martell tried to transfer last year, and Urban Meyer had to, like, talk him into staying. Baldwin had been talking to Ryan Day, I assume, before Justin Fields ever became part of the situation. There's always open communication between coaches and the quarterbacks. And so I would assume that this Ryan Day wasn't blindsided by the fact that Matthew Baldwin might be leaning towards leaving. And Tom, all of the time we saw practice this spring when it was mainly Justin Fields with the ones, especially after like the first or second practice when it was always Justin Fields with the ones, that starts to make more sense now, whereas where Ryan Day knows he knows he's got one guy who isn't going to go anywhere, and that's Justin Fields. And when people think that Justin Fields caused everybody to leave, I'm also thinking one of the reasons Ryan Day went out and got Justin Fields is because everybody was leaving or trying to leave, and he had to go and get the best insurance policy possible. And that insurance policy isn't necessarily why everybody left, but it is. But like, he got there. The reason Ryan Day went and got him is because he was the best option, and also because Ryan Day knew that, like, maybe these guys aren't going to be here for the long haul.
The possibility that guys are going to leave would certainly lead you to want to go out and get as good a quarterback as you can. But when you are playing with the goals that Ohio State has, Ohio State's goal is not just, let's have a good season and go 9-3 and go to the Citrus Bowl. Because there are a lot of quarterbacks that could take Ohio State to a 9-3 Citrus Bowl kind of season. Ohio State's goals are a lot higher than that. Ohio State's goals are win the Big Ten, go to the college football playoff, potentially win the national championship. That is basically the goal that every Ohio State season starts with. And you need a certain level of quarterback to get to that level. There are a lot of quarterbacks that can get you to 9-3. There are not that many quarterbacks that can get you to 14-1, 15-0, the kind of season that is the ultimate goal for every Ohio State team. And when there is a quarterback who has the ceiling of Justin Fields out there, that is the kind of quarterback that can get you there. That doesn't mean Justin Fields is going to hit that ceiling. That especially does not mean Justin Fields is going to get to that ceiling this year. He might be a 2-year development process to get him to that ceiling. But between his arm strength, his speed, his mobility, he is a uniquely talented quarterback who is in the very small class of quarterbacks that can get you to that level where they ultimately want to be. If you have the opportunity to add one of those guys and you're not necessarily sure that your existing guys are at that level, or if they are at that level, you're not sure they're going to stay, you have to go out and get someone, lock someone in that you know has that potential and will almost certainly now be here for the next couple of years.
I think Chris Chuganoff is that guy that can lead them to a 9-3 season. And how off do you think I am in saying that?
I don't think that it's impossible that Chris Chuganoff could lead them to a 9-3 season. I think I would feel very comfortable in saying Chris Chuganoff can lead them to an 8-4 season. I would say I would feel very comfortable in saying that. Well, because
obviously I would be counting the Michigan win.
The free space on your Ohio State bingo card. Yes. I mean, you have losable games this year. And so if you want to say Cincinnati at Nebraska, Penn State at Michigan, maybe throw in the Michigan State game if you want to, throw in another one somewhere. And they, somehow get yourself to 6 losable games on the schedule, which is, if they come out real flat, if they come out and give you a 2018 Purdue, 2017 Iowa level effort, sure, there are absolutely 6 losable games on the schedule. And with Chris Chugginoff playing quarterback, you'll win a couple of those, and then you'll lose you'll lose probably half or more. So 8-4, 9-3 is probably about right with him. And Matthew Baldwin, I think I'd feel pretty comfortable saying that's a 9-3, 10-2 kind of season, probably pretty comfortably. And Tate Martell, probably in that kind of 10-2 range as well. And there's no guarantee, obviously, that Fields gets them to that 11-1, 12-0 level this year. He has a ways to go with accuracy and all that, but the ceiling is there in a way that it isn't with Chris Chugginoff. Maybe he can get them to 9-3, and if everything goes exactly right, they could go 10-2. If everything goes exactly right with Justin Fields is a whole lot higher than that.
Well, as we've talked about in the past, the difference between like J.T. Barrett is the most prolific all-time career quarterback in Ohio State history, but he wasn't the guy that could take them to the final step and beat an Alabama or a Clemson. Whereas Dwayne Haskins was that type of quarterback, they just didn't get there. He was better equipped to handle that 14th and 15th game, and I think Justin Fields could be that guy as well, but that doesn't mean they're going to get there, just as we saw last year. I'm wondering what the quarterback room, and I wrote about this a few days ago, what does the quarterback room look like if there's no Justin Fields? Because I think we have to assume, and tell me if this is a false assumption or Matthew Baldwin or Tate Martell, one of those guys is going to transfer if they're just competing against each other, it would seem to me. And even Tate Martell, I assume, would have gone through spring practice, but it sure feels like one of those guys would be leaving. And if Ryan Day didn't want Tate Martell around, as Tate Martell said, maybe he doesn't feel the love. And so you're left with one of Matthew Baldwin or Tate Martell. The winner of that competition is still here. And you've got DeJuan Mathis, who would still be here likely, unless he just decided he still wanted to go to Georgia because Fields ended up somewhere else. But let's assume you've got Martell or Baldwin and DeJuan Mathis and Chris Chugginoff. Would you rather have that, or would you rather have a guy like Justin Fields who can get you that 14th and 15th win, and you still have Chris Chugginoff, and they'll go get somebody else in the transfer portal? We'll talk about that. But if Justin Fields isn't here, that doesn't mean the quarterback room is suddenly fixed by any means.
No, it definitely doesn't. And there's almost no question that if you're given the choice between Tate Martell and DeJuan Mathis and Chris Chugginoff, or Justin Fields and Chris Chugginoff, or Matthew Baldwin and Chris Chugginoff and DeJuan Mathis, the unquestionably the highest ceiling in that group is the one that has Justin Fields in it. That's not even a question, I don't think. And there are some ways that you would have more security if you had a DeJuan Mathis and someone who's coming back and has had a year in the system, or potentially 2 years in the system in Martell's case. The floor is probably a little higher in that case because you have a couple experienced guys. You've got 3 scholarship quarterbacks. You don't have if 2 guys get hurt, it's a complete and total disaster if they can't add another person, which, as you mentioned, we'll get to that conversation in a minute. But, the floor right at this very second as we talk on Tuesday night, April 23rd, the floor is, higher in that kind of situation. But overall, this is a shoot your shot thing. You are not playing it safe. You are not trying to go 9-3. I mean, 9-3 got Earl Bruce fired. 9-3 is not what you shoot for at Ohio State. So shoot your shot. Go for the guy who has a better chance of getting you to 14-1, 15-0, and see what happens. And it is absolutely going to be an interesting season. If Justin Fields hits his potential, it's going to be a real exciting season. If Justin Fields doesn't hit his potential, it's still going to be interesting to watch. And if they have to dip into that depth at quarterback for some reason, that's going to be a very different kind of Ohio State season than we've seen in quite a while.
Yeah, and I could make the argument that Chris Chuganoff is a more suitable backup this year than Dwan Mathis, who you're talking about, a fifth-year senior in Chugs, who is now going in, almost completing a 12-month cycle in Ryan Day's offense, versus a true freshman in Dwan Mathis who is not ready. And if you're assuming that your starter is, let's say, Martell, and your backup would be Dwan Mathis, then I've got you, I would think, bested in both my starter with Justin Fields and my backup with Chuganoff. And if Chuganoff is the backup with Martell starting anyways, and Mathis is the number 3, then I've still got you beaten, because I'm going to assume that Justin Fields is better than 1, Matthew Baldwin, because he beat him out, and 2, Tate Martell, because, well, I'm sure that's just fantasy. But I don't think the quarterback situation changes or is for the better without Justin Fields. And I also don't know that it's better if Urban Meyer is still here. I've seen there are people who are blaming Ryan Day for this situation. And you're talking about, you've lost Joe Burrow, Dwayne Haskins. Both of those guys left with 2 years of eligibility remaining. You lose Burrow, Haskins, Matthew Baldwin, Tate Martell, Dwan Mathis, 5 guys in a 12-month span. Nobody's going to withstand that. That's not Ryan Day's fault. That's just the situation that they found themselves in. But I don't think it looks any different with, or better with, Urban Meyer still here, because you're still running into the situation with Martell and Baldwin. And doubly so when you've got Urban Meyer sitting courtside with Justin Fields at a basketball game. So, I don't get blaming Ryan Day for a situation that has been brought on, and I'm not going to blame the transfer portal either. It's the position. Quarterback is just, it's like that. And I think the graduate transfer situation has hurt Ohio State with the Joe Burrow thing, and he was free to go. But as Urban Meyer has said many times, that's the nature of the position, and I don't think it would be different. Do you think it would be different if Urban Meyer was still the coach this year?
Put it this way. Justin Fields would probably look pretty good running an Urban Meyer offense. So yeah, I think Urban Meyer is a keen enough evaluator of quarterback talent that he would recognize that Justin Fields would probably do a pretty good job running his offense. So, I mean, go back to high school. Urban Meyer was recruiting Justin Fields pretty darn hard. So I don't think anything's changed. So no, I would expect you'd be in largely the same situation. The funny thing is, you just rattled off 5 names, 5 scholarship quarterbacks who have either left or failed to come. There's actually a 6th, Corey Curtis, a walk-on, who was the 4th stringer last year. He also transferred. They have had, at a position where you typically have 4 guys on scholarship at a time at most, 6 guys have either left or failed to come in the last 12 months. And if you want to go back 3 months or so before that, Emory Jones didn't come in December of 2017. So there has been a lot of flux at that position. And if you go and look at other schools, there are plenty of other places that are going through the same thing right now with the unique demands and positioning of that quarterback spot, where you can only have one guy. These are all, alpha male guys who have gone through high school as the man on their team and are not used to sitting and waiting for 3 years or 4 years in most cases, and don't want to do that. And as a result, you're seeing a lot of quarterbacks bouncing around in that transfer portal a year or 2 years after they get there. I mean, we're going to have a nice smooth transition, but I'm going to use Kentucky as an example here. Mm-hmm. Kentucky has a starting quarterback. Okay, good. Their number 2 quarterback from last year is a kid named Gunnar Hoke, who we're going to hear about in a second. He just put his name in the transfer portal. Their number 3 quarterback last year, Danny Clark, also put his name in the transfer portal. So now Kentucky is down to their starting quarterback and then a bunch of unproven guys and a true freshman. That's essentially the same basic position Ohio State is in this year. And that is not unusual. That's just basically the way it is right now. And you've got guys kind of ping-ponging around looking for the best, the best opportunity for themselves. And that's all well and good. I don't have an issue with that. That's just the reality right now of the situation. And there's a whole long, interesting conversation to have about what that actually means for the game of football long term and what that will mean for some kind of top level programs. But that's the reality of the situation right now, and that is not Ryan Day's fault or Urban Meyer's fault or anyone else.
And that goes back to something we've talked about before, and what you have written about this past week is you got to sprinkle some of those Ohio quarterbacks in and hope that they stick around at least as long as Joe Burrow did. He's an Ohio quarterback, but you got 3 years out of him. And even if Matthew Baldwin never takes a meaningful snap, if you get 3 years out of him, that's a whole hell of a lot better than what you just got from him. And that would be the same for any of the quarterbacks. If you can get at least 3 years out of them, and they got 3 years out of Dwayne Haskins, but when a guy is that productive, you'd sure like at least one more year of that. You mentioned Gunnar Hoak, and we can move on to him right now. He entered the transfer portal, and we talked about him a month or two ago as a guy to watch in this whole thing. And when we have talked about him, and then yesterday, I think it was Monday, when he announced that he was that he was transferring, and we were on Twitter talking about it, and we get a bunch of Buckeye fans saying, well, why would he want to come to Ohio State and be a backup? And, first of all, he's from Columbus, and his family is here, and that would be a good fit for him. The other thing is, it is Ohio State. You are presumably one snap away now from being the starting quarterback. If you beat out Chris Chugunov to be the backup, there is a much easier road and a much more, I guess, an easier road, and maybe a more alluring road to Ohio State now that Matthew Baldwin is gone and you've got kind of like one guy ahead of you. So, Tom, there's plenty of reasons why a guy like Gunnar Hoak would want to come to Ohio State, and even more reasons why you would think gladly take somebody like him or take exactly him.
Yeah, he is. I mean, from Ohio State's side, this is the realistic best case scenario. There were people, I mean, you mentioned people wondering why he would want to come to Ohio State. There were people in the comments of the article that I wrote about him being in the transfer portal saying, well, I mean, he couldn't even win the starting job at Kentucky. Why would Ohio State want him? Like, who do you think Ohio State is adding at this point? Let's stipulate some basic facts. Number one, Ohio State has 2 scholarship quarterbacks on their roster for the 2018 season. Fact number 2, there are not a whole bunch of 2020 recruits out there just sitting there waiting for Ohio State to offer. It's not like there's a bunch of 5-star quarterback freshmen that are just sitting out there waiting for Ohio State to offer them now so they can jump in the Ohio State class this fall. Third thing is, you are not going to get the Jalen Hurts, Kelly Bryant caliber transfer quarterback to come to Ohio State because they already got that guy. They got their version of that. His name is Justin Fields. Jalen Hurts is leaving Alabama because he wants to go start somewhere. Gunnar Hoak is a kind of unique situation because of his family ties. He grew up in Dublin. He was a quarterback for Dublin Coffin High School. His dad played for Ohio State under Earl Bruce, actually roomed with Chris Spielman. I mean, this is a Buckeye family through and through. His parents actually still have Ohio State season tickets, even as he was going to Kentucky. So, I mean, this is a very, very closely tied to Ohio State family who, there is a decent chance that this is, a possibility. This is a dream for them, for him to get to play at Ohio State. And he camped at Ohio State in high school, wanted to get an offer from Ohio State. The offer never came, so he went to Kentucky, played in Kentucky for 3 years. Now, I mean, like you mentioned, if he comes back to Ohio State now, he gets to, he'll get to go to grad school for a couple of years. He has 2 years of eligibility, so it's a great fit from the Ohio State side. And the path to playing time this year is not a real long, convoluted one. Nope. If he can beat out Chris Chugunov, and maybe he can and maybe he can't, Chugunov has basically a year head start on him, but he doesn't have to beat out Justin Fields. He needs to beat out Chris Chugunov to be the backup, and then you're going to have, they're going to be careful with Justin Fields this year. You're going to have, if you are the backup, you are going to get a chance to play during games. You are going to, and you're one injury away from being the starter. That's And if your goal is to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State, that is about the best path you could ask for. So, and he's here for 2 years. So even if he doesn't start this year, in 2020, you've got Justin Fields, you have a true freshman in Jack Miller, and you have potentially Gunnar Hoke back for, and then at that point, he's almost certainly the backup at the start of the season while they kind of get Jack Miller up to speed. So I don't want to say it's a miraculous confluence of events, but this is about the best possible case scenario for Ohio State if this all comes together, that you're getting a experienced Power 5 quarterback who is willing to potentially come to Ohio State even if he's not expecting to be the starter this fall. And who then has 2 years of eligibility to play for you. Like that, I know that he's not Jalen Hurts, but this is about as good a result as Ohio State could possibly have given their current circumstances.
Yeah, he's another version, better rated recruiting wise, of Chris Chuganoff, where they needed somebody who had 2 years of eligibility remaining. They got Chris Chuganoff, and we talked, I don't know, maybe after the Rose Bowl, like they need to go find another Chris Chuganoff, but that's not going to be easy. And Gunnar Hoke it makes the most sense. He obviously had an offer from Kentucky, had offers from Cincinnati, Syracuse, Toledo, Buffalo, Bowling Green, was the number 40 ranked pro-style passer in the 24/7 composite in his recruiting class of 2016. So there is he is a major college football quarterback, and he checks all of the boxes that you have in Ohio State's situation, and adds to it with that second year of eligibility, because they would need it. I mean, if you look at the rest of the graduate transfer market, and I wrote about that a few days ago, and I left Gunnar Hoke out because he wasn't in a portal, but obviously we knew that he would be the most likely option. Really, there are no other good options. Like Ross Bowers out of California, started at Cal in 2017, lost a job, wants to start. That's not an option really. Matt Fink at USC, maybe he's transferring, maybe he's not. Connor Neville at Washington State, he was like the 5th or 6th quarterback this spring. And I mean, there are some bright sides to being at like Washington State or these lesser schools where they can stockpile quarterbacks, these 2-star guys who don't have the same like immediate expectations, knowing that it'll take them a while. But I figure if you're the 5th or 6th guy at Washington State, maybe Ohio State's not the place for you. I was surprised by the Tommy Stevens thing at Penn State, that he is going to be a grad transfer, but if he's transferring, you would think it would be to start somewhere, and that's not, really, that's obviously not what Ohio State is looking for. And there's no other fit as perfect as Gunnar Hoke. And there's also this thing where I don't think it's crazy to think that a quarterback like Chris Chuganoff or Gunnar Hoke or Justin Fields even would get better at Ohio State under Ryan Day's coaching, under Mike Yurcich's coaching, and Kevin Wilson. I don't think it's crazy to think those guys would get better at Ohio State than they would at Kentucky or West Virginia or Georgia. So the player you've seen, the Chris Chuganoff you've seen at West Virginia, I would think the better version is the guy he is now. For one, he's older. For two, you would, from what we have seen of Ryan Day's ability to coach quarterbacks, it's been he's the proof is there, and I don't think it's unfair to say that Gunnar Hoke would become a better quarterback under Ryan Day, which is also another reason that Ohio State would be a good fit for a quarterback. I wrote a month or two ago, like, is Ohio State going to become quarterback U? Now, that's in reference to guys going to the NFL, not in reference to like having quarterbacks, because we know they don't really have many right now. First, they have to get quarterbacks to be quarterback U. But if Dwayne Haskins is a top 10 pick like we expect, and if Justin Fields becomes that next first round pick, that's that's something that guys will take notice of, and that's not a bad thing, and it's only something that will help, and it could help in a situation like this where Gunnar Hoke is like, you know what, I can become a better quarterback. I can be at my dream school. My family can see me play, and it only takes them 45 minutes to get home after the traffic. So there's a whole lot of reasons why this would be the right move for everyone. Just like Marcus Freeman becoming Ohio State's linebackers coach.
Yeah, and that worked out great. And I mean, of all the changes they made this offseason, I think unless Gunnar Hoke is also Kentucky's coach in waiting, I think that's probably probably not the best comparison. But yeah. But you're right. I mean, there are definitely times when there is something that seems like an absolute no-brainer that doesn't come together for one reason or another, and that's until anything is done. You can't assume anything, but this is one of those things that sure makes sense on paper, because I mean, like you said, he's going to get better under Ohio State's coaching staff. Kentucky is not a school that has, Mark Stoops is not renowned as an offensive genius, put it that way. That is not the side of the ball where he has made his money. In my opinion. And the other thing is, you've got better skill talent at Ohio State. Again, in my opinion, but you have better skill talent around you who you can. I mean, there were a whole lot of times that Dwayne Haskins tossed the ball about 6 inches forward and got 78 yards passing out of it last year, and that's not necessarily something you're going to get a whole lot at Kentucky. So, and when Hoke has had a talent advantage at Kentucky, he played in the spring game this year and got he played with. They basically split up the ones versus the twos. And when he was running the second team offense versus the first team defense, his numbers were just kind of like a little bit okay. And when he was running the first team offense against the second team defense, he was something like 13 for 14 for 200 yards and a couple touchdowns. And so, there is some talent there. If he has open receivers, he's the kind of quarterback that can hit them. So, as far as a baseline goes, that's not a bad place to start if you're looking for a quarterback.
No, now, when we talk about all of these quarterbacks who have left, I mean, it's going to take a long time to get back to where Ryan Day wants his quarterback room. Ideally, he wants 4. He said maybe on signing day that that's getting more and more difficult to achieve because players transfer. But if you look at, say, Ohio State gets Gunnar Hoke this year, you look at next year, 2020, you'll have Justin Fields, Jack Miller, and Gunnar Hoke. And then the year after that, 2021, if we're assuming Justin Fields leaves for the NFL early, you've got Jack Miller, Gunnar Hoke, and then a 2021 signee, be that Kyle McCord or whomever. But even then, by 2022, now you'll finally have like Jack Miller, the 2021 guy, and a 2022 signee, but you still won't have the 4 guys until 2023 at like the earliest, assuming Jack Miller isn't a 3-year and done guy. So looking for 4 scholarship quarterbacks that you recruited, that may never happen again unless Ryan Day, we know he listens to the show, unless they go back to what we've talked about with those Ohio quarterbacks. Because, Tom, it's going to be a while until they are happy, comfortable, satisfied with the quarterback room and the talent they have.
Right. Yeah. If you want to get to 4 and you're going to do it adding 1 every year, that involves crossing your fingers and hoping no one transfers. And that has not been a game plan that has worked out real well for them in the last couple of years. So you are at some point probably going to have to start taking 2 quarterbacks in at least some of your classes with.
I think they need to do it this year and next year, but I don't know that they will.
Yeah, the big question is whether they have told Jack Miller already, you will be the only quarterback in this class. If they've told him that, then that can be kind of dicey to say, okay, well, actually, we may take a second one. And then how does how does he respond to that? Does he understand that this is a insurance policy and this is not someone who's necessarily going to threaten him for his job? Maybe, I don't know. And maybe that may be a conversation they have to start having with a 2021 guy. Maybe it is Kyle McCord, who, I mean, I think that every indication is they really like Kyle McCord. He and Marvin Harrison Jr., both out of Philadelphia, I think Ohio State coaches would pretty much do cartwheels down the hallways of the WAC if they got both of those guys. But you have to have that conversation in advance with them and say, look, we have to bring in a second guy because we're just trying to establish a baseline of depth right now.
Right.
And if this is a 2-star or low 3-star Ohio quarterback whose other offers are from, pick an Ohio MAC school, you're taking a guy whose other offer is from Bowling Green or Kent State or Akron or wherever. Like, this is not someone who is probably going to immediately threaten someone of Jack Miller or Kyle McCord's talent. But you have to have those extra bodies so you don't get in these positions every year where you're just absolutely praying that the right grad transfer happens to fall in your lap, like it did last year with Chris Jugganoff and like it apparently may this year again with Gunnar Hoke. That is not something you can bank on long term, and you don't want to have to do that every year. You want to have guys who have been in the system, been in the room, been in the offense for 3-4 years. You want to have that baseline. You don't want to have a complete turnover of that quarterback room every 12 to 18 months. So, but you have to have that conversation with those guys up front. I mean, I saw people talking about, well, if they sign Jack Miller in December, then they could bring in an Ohio quarterback and sign him in February, and Jack Miller's already stuck. And it's like, that's not really the way you want to start. That's not the foot you want to start your relationship with a new quarterback off on. You want to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page. And with Miller, maybe he's open to it, maybe it's not. But if you start with that 2021 quarterback, then maybe that's an easier conversation to have. And then before Kyle McCord or whoever it is committed, then everyone's kind of on the same page. Everyone understands the reasoning for it. Everyone understands the game plan, and everyone can kind of move forward. Because you want to make sure you are being honest with people. You can't trick people into signing with you. That does not set you up for long-term success. Because guess what? Recruits talk to each other. That's a thing that happens.
And if Jack Miller's like, I'm not really feeling that, then you have to decide, okay, well, would I rather have Jack Miller or would I throw that away for some reason and go get an Ohio kid that we're looking at as insurance, like an Ohio version of Kenny Guyton, where you aren't expecting him to play until his 4th year or 5th year, or that you just need somebody so that you're not left at the altar again, or like you said, hoping for a graduate transfer to fall into your lap. But if they want to get those numbers up, they have to take multiple quarterbacks, and it's a touchy situation. And I don't know that I don't think it will happen, simply because what quarterback wants to be like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And like you're saying, it's not the cool thing to sign a quarterback in December and then go sign another one in February. I'm sure it's the norm at some places. And I don't know, if I say that Urban Meyer would do something like that, is that accurate? Is that unfair? I feel like he would have done that maybe years ago. I don't know that he would do that in the last 3 years or the last 4 years.
Florida Urban Meyer might have. Florida Urban Meyer probably did do that at some point, but I mean, that's not something we saw at Ohio State. The most egregious thing that I can think of at Ohio State was when Stan Drayton, the running backs coach, left at the day after signing day to go coach in the NFL. That's about the most egregious thing, and that was 4 years ago. And that's not an uncommon thing either. That's something that a lot of programs will do. It's not a great look, and it's not something that Ohio State has repeated at any point in the last 4-ish recruiting classes. So I think they probably learned their lesson from that.
But that was also a situation similar to this where they needed a running back in that class. They had Damian Harris was in that mix, and Kareem Walker, I believe. and Mike Weber, and they knew they were going to strike out on Damian Harris, and maybe LJ Scott was the other guy in that whole scene. I don't know if Kareem Walker was, but LJ Scott, and they had to get somebody, and it was a sticky situation, but it feels kind of like that where it's as close to desperation as you can get. Obviously, they're not desperate for a second quarterback yet, or for a 2019 guy or 2020, but the situations can cause coaches to do things that they normally wouldn't do if everything is being equal. But that's not really. There's nothing equal about being desperate for a running back or a quarterback and pulling out a few stops to do it. But yeah, it's not something that, especially in the age of social media, it's not a good way to present your brand and present the Block Go. Another quarterback that we haven't mentioned is JP Andrade, who's a 2019 kid, the number 57 pocket passer, according to 24/7 Sports, who has offers from like FCS schools, I believe, but has preferred walk-on offers from Ohio State and Florida. Was at the spring game for a visit, and he is still out there. What would if he chose to commit to Ohio State, he would improve the room in terms of numbers, and he put up some good numbers in California where he's from, but it wouldn't affect the scholarship situation. I don't see him getting a scholarship offer, but they like we've been talking about for the last 40 minutes, they need bodies, Tom.
Right. They do need bodies. And he's someone who plays at a reasonably high level of California high school football, which is, that's a pretty good high school football state. It completed 67% of his passes last year, 4,366 yards, 38 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Those are pretty good numbers. And, you're throwing in perfect Southern California weather and all that. And so I'm sure a little bit of a question of how well that'll translate to throwing in Columbus in November, but he is, we mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of 5-stars sitting out there waiting to sign with Ohio State in 2019. If you go down the list of quarterbacks, like he's not quite it, but he's pretty close to it. And he's certainly the most viable option, I think, at this point. He has a preferred walk-on offer from Florida. He has a scholarship offer from South Alabama. He is absolutely interested in coming to Ohio State, and it would very likely be as a preferred walk-on, which the short version of that is you get to practice with the team for all of fall practice. Regular walk-ons, you have to join partway through the fall, but you basically have a guaranteed spot in fall camp, and you're ahead of the other random kids who decide to try out for the team and try and walk on. So he would be, if they can get him, that would be great. I've talked to him a little bit. He's looking at kind of like a mid-May kind of decision. He said hoping to make a decision soon. My guess would be more likely he ends up at Ohio State than Florida, but that's just a guess. He didn't really give any real indication when I talked to him about it. But he's another person who, you put him in there, you have the opportunity to earn a scholarship. That's something that if he gets to Ohio State, if he comes to Ohio State and plays well, he can earn a scholarship. That's something that happened with C.J. Saunders, the wide receiver, a couple of years ago. That happened with Kevin Woidke, the offensive lineman, this year. You can get yourself on scholarship. And if he plays well enough, they're going to probably have to put him on scholarship if they want to keep him around, because with the way quarterbacks transfer, if he starts showing some real talent, he's going to have a whole lot of suitors for his services. So, he's someone who probably comes, and if he's a walk-on for a year, then you may have a decision to make if you want to keep him, if he looks like someone that could really help the program long term. But he's another name that if you add him, it's almost a lottery ticket at this point. Like, give it a shot. Like, I'm sure they would love to bring him in, give it a shot, see what you got. And if he's if he's got the ability to play at this level in any kind of capacity, where he can be just even a depth guy, be a third string guy, like great. Add him in, put him on scholarship, and helps get those numbers up and builds your numbers up faster than just about anything else you can do.
The scholarship angle is interesting because Ryan Day says he wants 4, and they slot it to allow for that. And the only way to really get to 4 scholarship quarterbacks would be JP Andrade until like 2023, when they finally were able to take a quarterback every year and possibly keep all of them. So if if he was torn and they said, you know what, all right, we'll offer you a scholarship, it's not really costing them anything, because that, like I said, they can't bring in enough quarterbacks to where he's taking somebody's spot, basically. And there's generally going to be room. Rarely are they playing at like 85 exactly, 83, 84 is that generally where they are. And if they are at 85, then there's roster management for that. But it might be like, if he's torn, that would, you're coming from California, and although if you're looking at Ohio State and Florida, it wouldn't seem like a distance or money would be a factor. But anytime you can get that scholarship, that's always going to outweigh, like a scholarship at Florida or Ohio State, or walking on at the other spot. And that's kind of a no-brainer.
Absolutely. And the other thing that makes JP Andrade particularly interesting is he goes to Bonita High School in California, it's like, I'm going to say 20 minutes east of the Rose Bowl, but really it could be anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours, depending on when you're actually driving there. But Bonita High School's rival is San Dimas High School. And last year, Bonita beat San Dimas 28-14. And as we learned in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, San Dimas High School football rules. So JP Andrade must be pretty good if he beat him by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, if you can, and I assume the football team is also known as the Wild Stallions.
Sadly, the Bonita is the Bearcats. San Dimas is the Saints.
You know what we should do a podcast about? Just random California football trivia.
I thought you were going to say Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures.
No, it's been a long time since I've seen that. So yeah, that's the quarterback situation. And obviously there's a lot to think about, a lot to talk about. And we'll see how things get settled next month if JP Andrade gets involved in how Ohio State, how they choose to activate him or bring him in. The other thing this week is the NFL draft. And when I first sent you this rundown, Tom, I completely forgot about the draft because of this whole Matthew Baldwin, Gunnar Hoke thing. But the first round of the draft is Thursday. Second and third rounds are Friday, and then the rest is Saturday. Over the last few months, we've seen 5 different Buckeyes listed in the first round of various mock drafts. You've got Nick Bosa, Dwayne Haskins. Those are the 2 locks. Draymond Jones was in early mock drafts, but he's dropped way off since. Paris Campbell was in some early mock drafts, but he's dropped down into the second or so. Terry McLaurin popped up in Mel Kiper's latest mock draft, like earlier in the month, as the whatever pick in the late 20s to Indianapolis, which would be great for Terry McLaurin, being an Indianapolis guy. I still don't see that happening. I think, Tom, there's only going to be 2 first-round Buckeyes, and whoever passes on Nick Bosa, which would be the Cardinals, and that's about it. Yeah, as I've said on various radio shows and things like that, pass on Nick Bosa at your own peril in this draft, because to me, he is the perfect weapon. He is the most sure thing in the draft. And, I understand Arizona is in love with Kyler Murray, but I'm just saying, just skip him at your own risk.
I don't understand that at all. Like, I don't understand the Kyler Murray thing to begin with. Like, yep, he had a very good season, but when was the last time a quarterback like Kyler Murray won a Super Bowl? Russell Wilson is about the only comp I can think of who's gotten a team to the Super Bowl, right? I mean, it's wonderful that it's wonderful that there's a lot of, that everyone's in love with Patrick Mahomes right now, and Patrick Mahomes is a lot of fun, and I loved watching Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. But quarterbacks like Dwayne Haskins tend to win a whole lot of football games in the NFL, and until that changes, like you can think you're way ahead of a trend on something, and that's fine. If you're right, that's great. You're a genius. But if you're wrong, boy howdy, that will not go well. So I don't know that I think that Dwayne Haskins is not the top quarterback in this draft, and that history may end up proving that out. But yeah, Nick Bosa, if anything, Nick Bosa is the surest thing. Like, if you had to absolutely bet your life on someone in this draft making the Pro Bowl in the next 5 years, I do not know who you would take other than Nick Bosa. Because, like, there's a way Kyler Murray doesn't work out. There's a way, Josh Allen, the guy from Kentucky, that doesn't work out. There's a lot of guys that are like, yeah, there's a way this doesn't work out. Like, barring some kind of like absolutely cataclysmic injury, like, I don't know how Nick Bosa doesn't work out and be at least Joey Bosa good, which is, let me check the stats. Yup, pretty good. So, yeah, I don't quite get that one at all.
It was with the way Baker Mayfield played last year, and like you said, Russell Wilson has played throughout his whole career. It was like Kyler Murray, who is, let's say 5'10", instead of like automatically he would be a third rounder like Russell Wilson, they were like, you know what? He can be a first rounder. And then Arizona's like, hold my beer. He can be the number one pick. And for the sake of great college quarterbacks who never got a chance because of their height or never got the chance to be drafted this high, I hope he does well. And that opens up more eyes to quarterbacks who aren't 6'3", 6'4", 220, like Dwayne Haskins. But I don't want to be the guy taking Kyler Murray first overall to find out. I'll take him 12, 13, something like that, or after the first quarterback. Then you could be like, well, we had to take a quarterback and Kyler Murray was the best available. Our hands were kind of tied. Yes, we understand he's short. We'd prefer if he was taller, but we'll see how it goes. And if it's a failure, we'll be back next year and we can get another quarterback. But Dwayne Haskins, who will be the first Big Ten quarterback selected in the first round since Kerry Collins in 1995, the first Ohio State Buckeye quarterback taken in the first round since Art Schlichter went number 4 overall in 1982. So this is a big thing for Ohio State for recruiting. It's kind of a big thing for Dwayne Haskins as well. And we keep seeing so much talk about him sliding and dropping, which is the norm. Every year somebody or, a few players are getting this talk and you wonder why it is. And I wouldn't mind seeing him go 11 to the Bengals, slip that far. I think if the Giants decide they'd rather have Daniel Jones, okay.
Have fun storming the castle.
I didn't watch a lot of Duke football this year, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's not better than Dwayne Haskins. Maybe it's because I've seen a lot of Dwayne Haskins and I haven't seen any of Daniel Jones, but come on.
Right. Daniel Jones is this year's version of Josh Allen, where it's like the NFL people are all talking themselves into this. And it's like everyone who's watched college is like, yeah, but he's not that good. Right. Like I get that he's like, I don't know, had a great interview or looked good throwing in pads or whatever, but he's not good. Right. That he's supposed to be good and he's not. Right. Like, And Daniel Jones was a 3-year starter at Duke, which, okay, yep, that's good. And that generally bodes reasonably well for your chances. Like, you're better off being a multi-year starter and being in the NFL. But he last year he completed 60.5% of his passes for 2,674 yards, 22 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Dwayne Haskins' numbers basically threw 30 more touchdowns, and did he have more interceptions? I don't think he did. I mean, I don't understand. Like, how are you, literally, you people are paid millions of dollars to think about this stuff. How do you not notice that he might not actually be that great at football, which is kind of the whole point of this whole exercise? I don't get it.
When you're paid a lot of money to think about football, you have to spend a lot of time thinking about football, and you end up overthinking about football rather than just, well, this is what my eyes tell me. And you're like, well, yeah, but let's go beyond what our eyes tell us. And then things get all kinds of crazy foggy. And yeah, Dwayne Haskins, most of his yards come from behind the line of scrimmage or this or that. And it's like, well, that's not true, obviously. But you start looking for reasons why isn't it this guy? Like, we have to be sure that we don't screw this up. So let's make sure we don't screw up picking Dwayne Haskins by not picking Dwayne Haskins. And we'll pick somebody else at 6. And then I think they've got another pick later in the first round. And it's like, if you screw up, I think, do they have like the 17th pick, the Giants? I think it's like the 6th and the 17th. And if I'm wrong about that, I'm sorry. But if they screw up the quarterback in the middle of the first round, that's not as bad as screwing up the quarterback at number 6 in terms of image. And the way the rookie scale is right now, you can screw up a quarterback and it doesn't kill you. That's why Arizona can draft Josh Rosen in the first round last year and then go ahead and say, you know what, we're going to spend another number 1 on a quarterback because the salaries are all slotted and it's not outrageous anymore. So you can make mistakes at quarterback, which is odd because, like, hey, Giants, you could make a mistake by, you could draft Dwayne Haskins, and if he's not the guy, that's okay because you can go get somebody else and you're not locked in for a whole crap load of money. But I think whenever you look for something that isn't necessarily there, you can still find it because you're looking for particular things to ding him on. So you look at any quarterback, you can find something to ding him on. You look at any quarterback that you find something to like, and you can find that. And you just wonder, are they looking for more things to like with Daniel Jones than they are with Dwayne Haskins?
Dwayne Haskins threw 140 more passes than Daniel Jones last year. 140 more, and he threw 1 fewer interception. Like, I don't understand. He has a stronger arm, a more accurate arm. He completed 10% more of his passes, 70% completion percentage for Dwayne Haskins, 60% for Jones. Like, Jones is 2 inches taller. Congratulations. Like, go draft Manute Bol as your quarterback. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think about how well he'll see over the line. Like, I don't know. Like, I always get concerned when you call people who are literally getting paid to do this for a living idiots, but it seems like there are some real dumb people overthinking stuff in the NFL right now. This seems like a very, very simple choice. And yes, of course, there's always a chance that any quarterback washes out. It's basically a coin flip on just about everyone, but there are times that it's like, yeah, but this seems real obvious in a whole lot of ways.
And it's unfortunate that the draft is in Nashville this year, because if it was in New York and the Giants, I assume fans want Dwayne Haskins, like if they pass on him and draft an offensive lineman or something, just to hear the boos rain down. Or if they took Daniel Jones at 6, to hear that, like, oh man, chairs would come flying onto the stage. It would be glorious. Instead, they're in Nashville where nobody cares about anything. And, it'll be fine, I guess. Those are the only 2 I'm expecting on the first day. Do you think maybe we see Paris Campbell or Terry McLaurin, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, Paris Campbell and Terry McLaurin, I look at both of them and I'm like, yeah, I could completely see him in a Patriots uniform and just absolutely everyone just cursing his name for the next 10 years as he just racks up Super Bowl rings and all that. Maybe it would not. I think if you gave me the over-under of 2 Buckeyes in the first round, I would probably take the under. But there's a very good chance you've got 5 picked in the top 2 rounds, I think. So, you'll probably have one or both of the receivers picked either last couple picks of the first round or first few picks of the second round.
Yeah, I'll go. I think Paris Campbell ends up in the second, and then Terry McLaurin in the third. Sometimes these guys who get a bunch of attention at too early, like after the Senior Bowl or after the Combine, they can begin sliding down the boards. And Draymond Jones has been sliding since the Combine. We'll see where he ends up, if he can maybe sneak into the third round. I remember talking to a scout, even maybe before the Rose Bowl or after Draymond Jones declared, before he had started sliding, and he told me third round, and that was back when people thought he might be a first rounder. So I'm also interested to see where Mike Weber ends up. I think he's going to be pretty good, a guy who will also be able to split carries in the NFL and do it pretty quickly. Isaiah Prince, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, you don't really see his name early in a lot of mock drafts, like, third, fourth round even. Isaiah Prince, I updated your piece from maybe a month ago where all of the mock drafts had all of the Buckeyes, and I didn't want to say I copied yours word for word. About 60% of it I copied in terms of like the sites and the people doing the mock drafts. But Mike Weber, 4th, 5th, 6th round, Kendall Sheffield, 6th, 7th round, stuff like that. And it's unfortunate that he didn't get to work out, or that he got injured at the Combine. But are you expecting like any surprises? Like, who is the most likely guy to say jump up into the 3rd or 4th round that maybe people aren't looking at or thinking about? Is there anybody?
Third or 4th round, you could see like a Michael Jordan, Mike Weber, maybe Isaiah Prince. I saw Isaiah Prince kind of in that 4th round-ish range on a few mock drafts a little while ago. I haven't looked super recently, but he was kind of in that range potentially. Kendall Sheffield, like maybe. I mean, all you need is one team to really like you, and
the Raiders.
Then, yeah,
everybody's a first rounder.
Kendall Sheffield would be the most Raiders pick. Like if Al Davis was still alive, Kendall Sheffield, if he had run his 40, Kendall Sheffield might have been a first round pick for the Raiders back in the 90s.
Don't worry. Al Davis is still alive. He will be in the draft room via Ouija board.
Yeah, it's any of those guys could go. I mean, they're all going to go. And I mean, once you get past the 4th round or so, it's like, yeah, sure. Maybe they're a 5th rounder, maybe they're a 7th rounder. I don't know how much of a difference there is meaningfully in terms of, it literally, like I said, is one team. One team likes you, and all of a sudden you're a 5th rounder instead of a 7th rounder. So the other guys Johnny Dixon, I'll be interested to see if he gets picked.
I just want to see him get drafted.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense he might end up as an undrafted free agent just because of concerns over his knees, but he's someone I would love to see get a chance to play, get a chance to go to camp, show what he can do, and hopefully, ideally, make a team. At least get to play 1 year. Like that would be cool to see after all he's been through. And then Demetrius Knox, Malcolm Pridgeon, maybe they get signed on as camp guys, something like that. But I think I'm kind of most interested to see where Kendall Sheffield goes. Like I think he's the one who, you see him projected as like a 6th or 7th rounder. Like that would not surprise me if someone like jumped up and snapped him up in like the 5th round or something, and just kind of everyone went, "Oh, didn't see that coming."
Ohio State does have a legacy or a reputation, so maybe that bumps him up around just by being from Ohio State. We'll see. So that's the draft. Look forward to that. Like I said, Thursday night, Friday night, and then I believe Saturday afternoon until the whole thing is over. I've always enjoyed watching the draft, even as a kid. One time, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the show, and I know we'll try to speed this up, Tom. Don't worry. But my brother and I went to this is when I was probably like 10, and we would go to my aunt and uncle's in town because they had cable, so we would watch the draft there. And it was just me and him there, and I went to he stepped outside, and I let the dog outside. He's like, "Remember, said something about don't lock us out because we don't have a key. And of course, as I'm shutting the door, I'm like, what? And, I'd locked us out. So then we had to go find, we had no cell phones, obviously. It was like 1987 or something like that. And where I'm from, if you want to go find a family member, you don't like drive to that person's house. You drive to the VFW or the Moose Lodge. So we drove to the Moose Lodge, and one of my uncles was there. So, he allowed us, he let us in, and the draft day was saved. But that's life in a small town where you may not be able to call people, but you'll know where to find them. Tom, you probably didn't have that growing up where you grew up in a city.
I didn't have cable, so it was kind of the same thing.
Kind of. You want to get to the listener questions?
I sure do. First one from @BuckeyeTie23. Bigger shoes to fill, Ryan Day or Justin Fields?
Dwayne Haskins has a size 19 triple E. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, neither did I. I'm just making that up. No, it's Ryan Day. Because Urban Meyer is like Dwayne Haskins is the Urban Meyer of quarterbacks at Ohio State, but Urban Meyer is still the Urban Meyer of head coaches at Ohio State. So yeah, I didn't really think too hard about that one. That seems pretty cut and dried. But Dwayne Haskins is pretty darn good.
Dwayne Haskins is pretty darn good. I mean, and both of them had completely unprecedented levels of success in their own way, but Dwayne Haskins did it for 1 year and Urban Meyer did it for more than 1 year. And Urban Meyer's highest level of success was higher than Dwayne Haskins' highest level of success. So,
but let me ask you this. Yeah, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, the other thing is everything is on Ryan Day. Ryan Day's in charge of the whole thing. Justin Fields, if Justin Fields has kind of a bad game, they can probably get away with it if the running backs still play well and they can run the ball and the defense can save the day. That if you are new to Ohio State football and don't remember seasons prior to 2018, it is possible to win because the defense plays well, even if the offense doesn't play well. That is a thing that can happen. That is a thing that can happen. If you have only started watching Ohio State in the last 12 months or so, you may not believe it, but it is possible. So that's not everything is on Justin Fields. There's certainly a lot of pressure on him, and Ohio State needs him to perform up to his, the level of his potential in order to get where they want to get. But ultimately, everything is on Ryan Day's shoulders. The whole program, the recruiting, the direction of the program, and he is being asked to maintain a historically completely impossible level of success. So he could be a fantastic coach, and it might still drop off a little bit from the Urban Meyer level.
What if I argue that it would be easier for Ryan Day to bypass Urban Meyer's achievements at Ohio State than it will be for Justin Fields? And I would say this: if Ryan Day can make the playoffs half the time, he's already surpassed Urban Meyer at Ohio State. Urban Meyer made it in 2014 and 2016 of the 5 years that he could have made it. So if Ryan Day can do it 50% of the time, which would be better than Urban Meyer's 40%, I think you have to win one in there to really pull out the trump card. But I don't think it's unreasonable to expect Ohio State under Ryan Day or any head coach to make the playoffs 50% of the time. But it might be unreasonable to expect, it is unreasonable to expect Justin Fields to perform better than Dwayne Haskins.
It is unreasonable for to expect Justin Fields to throw the ball with right. And put up the numbers that Dwayne Haskins did. I don't know that it's unreasonable to think that, like completely unfathomable to think that the offense could be, just in terms of yards per play or points per game or whatever metric you want to use, as explosive or close to as explosive as last year. The other thing with Meyer is, yes, he only made the playoffs twice. Then there was also the year that he would have been playing for the national championship if not for some sad choices by Ohio State administration prior to his arrival. And then he missed them once by, basically a 4th and 1 running play. He missed them 1 year because of that. And then in 2015, he missed them probably because of a bad choice by the committee. In 2017, he missed them arguably because of a bad choice by the committee. And in 2018, he, again, was in that conversation. Like, there was not a year that Ohio State was out of the college football playoff conversation at any point, or the college football national championship or BCS title conversation at any point during his years, other than the 1 year that they were not eligible through no fault of his own. And, in the fourth quarter of the Big Ten championship game the other year, they were right in the conversation for that BCS title game again. So there's, yes, he only made it in 2 of the 5 years he was eligible, but he was not very far from making it potentially basically every single year. That I think is the standard that people are going to have, the standard he's going to get measured against. And that is like wildly unreasonable. Like people looked at last year as 13-1 season. It was like, yeah, it was okay. I mean,
there's a lot of things I would have liked to have changed about it,
Yeah, I mean, yes. Technically, they did hang more than 60 points on Michigan. Yes, technically, they did win the Big Ten for the second year in a row. And yes, technically, they did win the Rose Bowl. But I mean, the fourth quarter of the Rose Bowl wasn't that great. So, yeah. Like, I mean, but really, that's like the level of expectation. And you look at if you look at comments when I write the college football playoff articles or the, what bowl is Ohio State going to go to? It's like people are about ready to commit seppuku over them going to the Rose Bowl. It's like, no, this is actually what a good season looks like. And I'm sorry that Nick Saban has broken everyone's brain and makes everyone think that, like, oh, well, if we're not Alabama, we're garbage. Like, no, there are actually a lot of, and, this is something I should probably write about. Like, there are a whole lot of ways to enjoy college football other than being an Alabama fan. Because let's be honest, Alabama fans are miserable too. Like, Alabama fans are about ready to throw themselves off the roof after the national championship game. And it's like, yes, but you just won the year before that. And like, it's okay. You're not going to win every year.
We should win 3 times every 2 years.
Exactly. Like, there's a whole lot of ways to enjoy college football and things to really love about college football. And even if your team does not win the national championship, because, spoiler alert, out of the 120 or 130 FCS programs every year, or FBS programs every year, 129 are not going to win the national championship. So
losers.
And not all of them are like UConn and UTEP. Like, there are a bunch of good teams that have good seasons and still don't win the national championship. So you kind of need to make your peace with the fact that maybe you're not going to win the national championship every year, and that's okay. You can still have a good year, even if that doesn't happen. But
that's loser talk.
That is not the mindset. That is not the mindset of Ohio State fans right now. And that, I mean, this is a program that has, for a generation, basically not had to recalibrate their expectations because they just win the Big Ten like 2 out of every 3 years and go to the playoff a couple times and are in that college football playoff conversation every single year. And there are very, 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 very few programs that really can say that are at that level. And that is going to be extraordinarily difficult for Ryan Day to maintain that level. And that's why Ryan Day is the answer to that question.
It's an easy answer that we spend a lot of time on.
Yes. Next one from @BrockDoctor. Please assign percentage chances to recruiting targets and how likely various characters are to die in the Battle of Winterfell. Thanks, bye. So why don't we do the recruiting thing first, and then we can issue a spoiler alert on the Game of Thrones talk.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to throw out some of the 5-star guys, Tom, and you give me your percentage. And we'll start with Paris Johnson, who is technically committed to Ohio State, but not so much. I'm at 40% on him ending up a Buckeye. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go 50%. He's committed, but you're kind of making air quotes when you say that, because he's been to Georgia, I think, 3 times in the last couple months. He was just at Georgia last weekend for their big spring game, and it sure seems like Georgia's a possibility for him. So yeah, I'll go but I'm going to be real optimistic with the guy who's currently committed and say 50%.
All right. Here's a guy we haven't talked really about much, Mikhail Sherman, who has he's a linebacker from the DC area.
Correct.
And he's got an official visit, I think, coming up to Ohio State, maybe this weekend.
Yes, it's this weekend. Yeah,
but he's trending away to, like, he was all of the crystal balls, most of the crystal ball projections had Ohio State, and now I think it's like 83% Georgia. So I'm not feeling too good about this one. I will go, like 30% with an opportunity for that to go much higher, or at least higher after this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks ago, before I heard that he was going to be making an official to Ohio State this weekend, I would have had that at probably about 20%. Now, yeah, maybe give it 30%, and then with the understanding that he's already had his official to Georgia, I believe he took his official to Georgia last weekend as well. So he has his official to Ohio State. Ohio State has not had him on campus for a while. This is a chance for Ohio State to swing this back in their favor. It's entirely possible that 7 days from now, we're saying 50% for him or higher. But right now, yeah, it's probably more like 30-ish.
All right, what about Arizona running back Bijan Robinson? Where are you?
I would say not particularly optimistic. I would be south of 50% for sure. I don't know. Does he have an official set up for this fall yet?
June for Ohio State.
Oh, June. Okay. Yeah, I mean, sure. Anyone who is taking an official to Ohio State, you have to give them at least a 30% chance, because Ohio State knows how to roll out the red carpet. The recruiting staff at Ohio State is absolutely at the apex of the business. So they can, and there is a lot of there's a lot to sell at Ohio State. I mean, they have, all the real life Wednesdays and all that stuff in addition to the football stuff. I mean, there's a lot that they can show that makes Ohio State an attractive destination. But I think I'm going to be low on a lot of these guys, and I think there's a lot of wait and see with. So what is the first year of the Ryan Day era going to look like? And so I'll say 25% for him.
Yeah, that's where I'm at, around there. I've been told that he's told teams out west that he'd like to stay out west. So maybe that trip to Columbus can maybe sway him. What about the other running back, Kendall Milton? I'm out of California. I'm thinking like 35, 30, in that range. I don't feel great about it, even though he is definitely interested. They have taken unofficial visits to Ohio State, and his father has said, we don't visit places we're not serious about. But that's a long way to go, a long way to come to Ohio State from California.
Yeah, and I mean, just to define our terms here, just in case people don't follow recruiting real closely, you can take as many unofficial visits as you want to, but the catch is you have to pay for your own trip. So Kendall Milton, coming from California to Ohio, had to pay his own airplane ticket, pay his own hotel, all of that. You get 5 official visits. So that means the school can pay to fly you in, put you up in a hotel, all that kind of stuff. So that's the difference. So when a recruit takes an unofficial visit, that really tells you something. A lot of times you'll have guys take officials, and it's just like, yeah, sure, I'll go see the Ohio State Michigan game if you're going to pay to send me there. Sure, why not? But if a guy is taking an unofficial visit, and we saw Kendall Milton, I think he was here for the student appreciation practice. Yeah. I think a couple weeks ago, because we saw him at practice. So that tells you there is real legitimate interest. So yeah, I would certainly put him north of Bijan Robinson. So yeah, I'll say 40% for him.
All right, that's good. Julian Fleming, the number 1 receiver in the nation, who has been to Ohio State a bunch, but people are still saying maybe Penn State, maybe Clemson, and Ohio State is also in there. I'm at like 40%, and maybe like Penn State is 40, and then Clemson would be 20 or something like that. So I'm saying 40 and thinking that doesn't necessarily mean they're out of it, but he has been to Ohio State a bunch and says the right things, but like you said, we gotta see what the Ryan Day era looks like. Now, when I was talking to Jackson Smith and Jigba a couple weeks ago, he talked about how him and Jack Miller and G. Scott are trying to put together, obviously, a great passing class, with more receivers. And he said, as a high school receiver recruit, to watch this offense, it's fun, it's amazing, it's a dream offense to be in as a receiver. Contrast that with Penn State's offense, not so much. Contrast that with Clemson's offense, and you saw a freshman receiver last year, Justin Ross, go over 1,000 yards receiving. So maybe the real battle here, even for the Pennsylvania kid, is Ohio State and Clemson.
I would certainly read it that way. I think Clemson is. I mean, you look at Clemson. They are just basically raking in everyone they can possibly, everyone they offer, everyone they want, they're getting right now. They just on Tuesday landed Brian Bressie, who's the top player in the entire class of 2020, defensive end, who was an Ohio State target, who we saw at Ohio State. He was at one of the games last fall, but they got him. I think Clemson is the big threat here. But of all the people that we're probably going to talk about, Julian Fleming might be, outside of Paris Johnson, Julian Fleming is probably the guy I'm going to say the highest number for. I would say this is at least 50-50 with him, just based on how frequently he's been to Ohio State. The interest is obviously very genuine, and it's reasonably close to his home. I think he's in kind of eastern central Pennsylvania. If I remember, he's from a little town called Catawissa, Pennsylvania. But he is very obviously legitimately interested in Ohio State, and the Ohio State has a lot to offer, and so I think there's a pretty decent chance he ends up at Ohio State, but let's call it 50-50.
Plus, you look at the state of Penn State now, they just lost Tommy Stevens. Quarterbacks are fleeing from that school, so why would a receiver want to go to Penn State with the rate that the quarterbacks are leaving?
Can you imagine a school losing quarter? What must that be like?
The last guy I'll mention is Raheem Jarrett, the receiver out of D.C., who seemed to be a lock to Ohio State for months and months, and now maybe not, and recently said, like, Ohio State is back in it. And you're like, well, weren't they always in it? And it turns out that maybe they weren't. And, people say that he likes to play the recruiting game and is one of those guys who enjoys the attention, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes fans get upset because they're being jerked around or whatever, but a guy who we've had his commitment piece written since January, December, November.
At least.
And probably haven't touched it up in a month or so. But, a guy who, if we would have done this poll 6 weeks ago, I would have been at 95%, and now maybe 45% tops.
Yeah, maybe south of that, because he is. If you look at the crystal ball on 247, it's Tennessee that's kind of trending now. But, Georgia is, I believe he visited Georgia with Mikhail Sherman. They go to high school together. So that's Georgia has seemed to be a threat for just about everyone at this point. Alabama, you always have to think about Alabama as a possibility. But Tennessee, I don't get Tennessee at all. Like, what would make Tennessee a particularly appealing destination for a wide receiver at this point? Like, I don't.
You like orange?
That's not a particularly explosive offense. They have not. I mean, this is only the second year of what's his name, the former Alabama defensive coordinator, who's the head coach there now. Whatever his name is, they have not, over the years, developed talent particularly well. Like, you don't see a lot of Tennessee guys at the combine. You're not going to see a lot of Tennessee guys at getting picked in the draft. Like Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, sure, I get all that. I don't really get Tennessee, but it's still early, and and I don't know. Maybe there's a great personal connection with T. Martin or something there, and that is enough to sell it. I don't know. But yeah, I would say I would have him under 50% right now, but that is a number that could swing wildly one way or the other a month from now too.
Whenever somebody chooses like Tennessee or Miami over Ohio State or Clemson or Alabama, it always makes me think less of that player. Like, wow, this is a poor decision. And this is where you go to when you never want to be heard from again. And hey, I'm an introvert too. I could just go sit in a corner and not be bothered. And that's what Tennessee is. Like, Tennessee is the corner. Miami is the basement of the corner where you're okay. This is your life that you're throwing away, never to be heard from again. So, whatever. The other three I had were Keely Ringo, the cornerback from Arizona, Justin Rogers, the offensive lineman from Michigan, and Johnny Wilson, a big 6'6" wide receiver from either Texas or California. California, I think. But I'm not.
Yes, California.
They've all had Ohio State in their final groups of 10, 12, 6, or whatever. I don't feel good about Ohio State's chances with any of them. Ringo says the right things and tweets the right things. Justin Rogers, is that Tennessee as well, or is that Georgia now?
Justin Rogers has been looking at Georgia. Justin Rogers was trending towards Georgia pretty much all last fall. Yeah. And he went to the same high school as Dwan Mathis. So that, and Dwan Mathis, the quarterback who was committed to Ohio State all cycle and then flipped to Georgia on early signing day. So that would make sense if he followed Dwan Mathis to Georgia. But that was the last time I saw anything significant on him. Was basically he was trending Georgia.
So are we ready to get to the Battle of Winterfell?
Well, here's the question. Do we want to do that right now, or do we want to do the other football stuff?
That's what I was going to suggest. We do the other football stuff, and then people can just shut us off if they want.
All right, so let's do Brock Doctor. We will come back to the Game of Thrones at the end. Next one from Escar Gray. So I'm thinking the transfer portal doesn't change the balance of power in general among teams, leagues, and regions. It's like anytime they try to set up new rules, that's fine, but it's still all of the programs with all of the money who are able to overcome. And Ohio State's not in a great situation right now, but they have Justin Fields. So not many teams can say they have somebody like Justin Fields. Alabama loses Jalen Hurts, but they still have Tua and all of these other major programs. Clemson loses Kelly Bryant. They still have Trevor Lawrence, and they are still recruiting. And oversigning was supposed to even things out, and it has. It's made things better. But you still look at the top, and it's still the same schools that it's always been. And that's where, Tom, when people talk about if you can't let schools pay players, or you can't do this or that, because then the balance of power would sway to the big schools. And look at the rankings. Like what sway? Yeah, exactly. Like if you can tell before the season, like if you give me 8 programs, I will tell you the top 5 recruiting classes and the 4 college football playoff teams. Like that, the sway already done swung. So yeah, I don't think that's a huge, I don't think that's going to be a huge groundbreaking thing. What it is going to do is I think it's going to introduce a lot more volatility into that kind of like second tier program, like at Kentucky. I mean, we talked about Kentucky earlier in the show. Kentucky has a starting quarterback now. If Kentucky's starting quarterback gets hurt, they are DUN. It is so long season. You are nice knowing you. Ohio State and Ohio State could be in that position too, where if you don't have another guy on the roster where he's got a couple seasons under his belt, reasonably highly recruited, that can get you to that kind of national championship. Like if Justin Fields gets hurt this fall, then the ceiling for the season drops from, potential college football playoff down to like, maybe they can go 9-3 or 10-2. Maybe if everything goes right. And you're going to see that, I think, a lot of places now until people figure out a way to keep multiple veteran good quarterbacks on the roster. And there's a couple different ways people are doing that. I mean, Alabama has taken a couple. Alabama has done the take two quarterbacks every other year kind of thing. And that has worked out reasonably well for them. But I mean, last year, Clemson, Kelly Bryant transfers right after Trevor Lawrence wins the job. The first game, it was the week of the Ohio State-Penn State game, because I remember we were driving to the Penn State game, listening to Clemson play Syracuse, and Trevor Lawrence got hurt. And it was like, oh no, it just got real very quickly for Clemson, because I'm now even blanking on who their backup at that point was, but it was not a Kelly Bryant caliber quarterback, and they very nearly lost to Syracuse. And if they lose to Syracuse, that's it. No national championship. Sorry. And that is how thin the margin of error is going to start getting for people, because you have this great top line quarterback, your great number one guy, whether it's Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or Tua. But if the drop off behind that guy is pretty significant, then you are one injury away from disaster. I mean, Penn State is in that boat this year. I mean, you mentioned Tommy Stevens transferring. They have Sean Clifford, who's a Southwest Ohio kid from somewhere in the Cincinnati area. He's going to be their starter this year. If he gets hurt, there's not a whole lot behind him that they want to throw out there. And Ohio State plays Penn State late in the season this year. So if Sean Clifford gets hurt in November, then all of a sudden Penn State is a real beatable team at the end of the year. But if Justin Fields gets hurt, then Ohio State is a real beatable team at the end of the year. So that's I think where you're going to see the difference is you have your margin for error gets a lot smaller.
And it's every school.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Last one from @RetroBud. Why does Sean Way play nickel corner instead of outside, given his size?
Because, Tom, that's why. No, Jeff Hafley, when we talked to him the very first time about will you continue to rotate three cornerbacks, he told the story of being with the 49ers and interviewing Marshawn Lattimore, like, why do you guys rotate? If you're a first rounder, why are you sitting on the bench on some series? And then the next year talking to Denzel Ward, like, why, if you're a first rounder, why do you rotate? Why are you sitting on the bench during plays? And Denzel Ward told him, because the guy behind me is probably a first rounder too. And he saw the picture, and it seemed like at that point the rotation would continue, or he was open to it, because he said if guys are good enough to play, then we have to get them on the field. Nothing we saw this spring would indicate that rotation is going to continue. And if it's not going to continue, then Shaun Wade needs to be on the field somewhere. And that's why he's been nickel and strong safety. And we don't know where Jordan Fuller will be in that situation when he comes back. Is he at free safety, which is the deep safety? Is he a strong safety, which is the slot safety in the base defense? So there are still more things to find out. But Tom, the reason he's not outside is because it looks like they're going to go with Damon Arnett and Jeff Okudah, and you still want Shaun Wade involved, and so you get him involved in the slot.
Right. This is the same philosophy we talk about at basically every position. They want their best 11 on the field, and getting their best 11 on the field includes Damon Arnett, Jeff Okudah, and Shaun Wade. So if only two of them can play outside, then voila, he moves inside. And I mean, you got to remember Marcus Williamson, who is, may very well be the starting nickel if he'd been healthy, has basically not been healthy for 2 years. He missed all this spring. He missed most or all of last year. So, if Marcus Williamson comes back and is playing at the level that they think he potentially can, then sure, maybe he slides back outside if that's where they have a room for him at that point. But yeah, they want the best 11 on the field, so that's where they think they can slot him in and get those best 11 on the field.
And he's shown that he deserves to be out there. He belongs out there and is comfortable. And yeah, I always liked the 3-man rotation. I know Kerry Combs swore by it for years, even before he was able to do it. So it'll be strange not seeing it out there, but anytime you can get Shaun Wade out there more, I think is a good thing.
All right, so I guess we'll should we do the wrap up and then do the
yeah.
Like, well, here, first of all, I'll just say before we get into anything else, those of you who have written us reviews, we sent out books, programs, all that this week. So if you have written us a review and DM'd me a screenshot, you should be getting that in the next day or two. If you have not reviewed us yet, please rate and review us on iTunes and DM either Gerd or me a screenshot, and we will get you something out to thank you for your support. And we'll do that. We do that probably every few weeks, once a month, something like that. So take the time to do that. We will send you out a little something as a thank you for that.
Correct. And so again, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you later the next time, but don't go just yet. We've got to talk about Game of Thrones. Although if you don't want to hear this, here's your opportunity to hang up, and we'll talk to you guys next week. For those of you remaining, we would issue spoiler warnings, but I mean, you should know that. Like, okay, so here's your spoiler warning if you're not this far along in the show. First of all, if you are caught up to this season and you are not like watching that night or the next morning, you're playing with fire. And because this is right now, every episode is an event, Tom. And if you're not live, there's a chance you're going to be spoiled, because I don't even care. Like Twitter, generally there's like, be careful tweeting live stuff. There's no be careful for this season of Game of Thrones. Everybody's just, it's going out there as it happens. And there's no concern about spoiling anything, because that's your fault.
Right. I have been like 2 or 3 minutes behind. There's a little bit, like I watched through a Roku, right. So there's a little bit of a lag, but also like sometimes my kids just aren't in bed yet. So we want to make sure we have the kids in bed before we turn on Game of Thrones, because, all of the nudity and death is not great for small children. So
one or the other is fine.
Yeah, so we
both together, it's a bit much.
You know how at the beginning of the episode they put up the, language warning or violence warning? It's just like, that's the whole alphabet is up there at the beginning of every episode. So, we're going to wait to get the kids in bed first. Yeah, exactly. So we're I'm generally 5-10 minutes behind usually, depending on when my kids actually fall asleep. So, yeah, I have just taken to staying completely off of Twitter during the episodes, because otherwise, Twitter explodes over something and it's like, what is it? I'm not going to find out for 10 minutes. Why? I won't know for 10 minutes.
All right. So Brock Doctor at Brock Doctor wanted us to assign percentages to how likely various characters are to die this week in the Battle of Winterfell. And the Battle of Winterfell is the longest battle sequence in television or movie history. The show this week is like 80 minutes. And this battle sequence is longer than the one in Return of the King. So it's going to be exhausting. So let's go ahead, Tom. I'll throw some names out to you, and you let me know. Jon Snow.
I think like 30 or 40%. This seems like it would be very early to kill him off.
Yeah, he's a 0%, Tom. That is the correct answer. He does not die this week, because if he does, there's going to be some splaining to do.
It's possible. I don't know that you could say literally anyone is a 0% in any given week.
This show.
It's not in this show. It is low. It is below 50%, which, considering the number of people that are probably going to die this week, if you're below 50%, you're doing pretty well.
All right. What about? And I don't know how well you know all of the names, but what about Tormund?
Tormund is one. Is
the wild redheaded dude.
The wild redhead, yes, the AKA the best character on the show, yes. I sadly think 80%. Like if I was writing the show, I would have him on the Iron Throne at the end of the season, because at the end of the series, because I mean that's the best possible ending. But yeah, I don't have a good feeling about him. I think we got our emotional goodbye with him last week, and we'll we will bid him adieu this week.
Yeah, he's going to die, unfortunately, because he's also part of a love triangle with Brienne and Jamie, and he's going to have to leave this world, and it's going to be sad because he is great, and he gives there's not a lot of humor in this show, and he might be all of it, and he's a favorite for sure, and all of these guys are, but yeah, he's dead. I'm at like 92%. Let me go here for you, Tom. Gendry, who is the bastard son of Robert Baratheon, who last week hooked up with Arya and possibly joined the houses of the Baratheon and the Stark houses, as Robert Baratheon suggested in other ways in the first episode of the first season. So, Gendry, what do you got there?
In the scene that made me pull out my phone, Google the name of the actress who plays Arya, and then Google her age to make sure this was really okay. She's 22. It's fine.
And then you're like, okay, kids, it's okay. You can watch. She's 22. Come on in, kids.
Is this a problem? It seems like it's a problem. Okay, it's not a problem. Okay. I have him at like 70%. He doesn't seem like if he's out there, it seems like it's not going to go well. And because it seems like a lot of people are going to die.
And he's a guy that you're not super emotionally connected to. So he's one of those guys that they could kill to say, that there's a big body count, but it's not as emotionally devastating as it will be when Tormund dies and I have to pause TV to sob. I don't cry a lot, but I think we'll all shed a tear when Tormund meets his untimely fate. What about Arya?
When Tormund dies, I'm going to have to pause the TV and go get a glass of Giant's milk out of the fridge to drink. Sadly, drink it out of Giant's a horn, milk.
All down your shirt. Tormund would have wanted this. Just drink it out of the gallon jug.
All right, Arya. I think I really would love to see her make it through. Which I'm gonna guess a really optimistically low number, like 40%, which means absolutely she's gonna die. But we'll see.
Yeah,
What about you?
I'm at like 20%. I mean, I think the Starks make it. So, I'm gonna hope she's low there. I mean, the show is about the Starks, for crying out loud. It's about everything, but it was always about the Starks. What about Brienne, Sir Brienne of Tarth, Tom?
That seems like she had her moment last week, and that's going to be it. So I'm going to put her about 75%.
Do you think she protecting Jamie? She saves Jamie, and then she herself succumbs to terrible, terrible fight wounds.
That sounds right, because I think we haven't gotten to Jamie yet, but I think Jamie has some business to handle down in King's Landing, so I don't think Jamie's going to go. So her saving him, I think, would be and perishing in the process. I think there's a pretty good chance that happens.
The emotional high of like this giant smile that she had last week being knighted, and so everybody's like, "Yay, yay!" And then it's gonna, your intestines are gonna be ripped out and splayed in front of you after this one, because she's gonna die.
Joy is fleeting, winter is coming. Enjoy Game of Thrones season 8.
Exactly. Here's one that's would be bad for me, because Sir Davos, the Onion Knight, is one of my favorites, and he's like the uncle, the smuggler uncle that only a few of us were lucky enough to have. He has managed to survive battles because he's not necessarily in them. So I'm at like 30%. I think he makes it. I hope he makes it to the end. He's one of my favorites, and I don't want to see him go. I will sacrifice others. I will sacrifice 1,000 Briennes. I don't know if that makes me a bad person. Probably does. But Tom, where are you?
Hang on. I have to write a 5,000 word piece on the patriarchy and why you think that. It's deeply problematic. I'm going to put him at like 50%, just because didn't he Didn't he say last week? Last week he said something like, you've lived this long. He's like, yeah, I haven't had to fight that much. Like, well, okay, that's what's called foreshadowing. That's. I have bad news, friend.
Darn your literary tools. What about Tyrion? I think Tyrion is going to make it because Daenerys has talked so much about how smart you are, and we need your brain. We need your brain. So I think he makes it. I'd give him like a 30% chance of biting it.
I would go even lower than that. I think like 15, because they want to keep him in the crypts, right? Isn't that what they're keeping him inside? So, I mean, the crypts are safe, right? That's totally gonna be fine, right? The guy who can raise people from the dead to fight for his army, you're gonna hide all the women and children down with where you keep the dead people. Like, this is gonna be fine. What's wrong with this plan? I don't see what could possibly go wrong.
See, Tom, I think we need to do like a TV show podcast, because the Starks are down there, and I think maybe the Starks are a magic. They have magic, and maybe they do come back to life, but maybe they're good. So, that's a theory that my wife has planted into my head, and I like it because I don't want the Starks, the dead Starks, to be bad dead Starks. Where are you on Jaime?
I think Jaime is like 10%. Yeah. Like Jaime has to go kill Cersei. Like that seems like the way this has to end. So, and he can't kill Cersei. He can't kill Cersei unless they kill him, and then the Night King raises him, and then zombie Jaime goes and kills her. That would be really exciting. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's the way they're going to play this. I think Jaime will make it through this, and Brienne will save him, and ultimately Jaime goes down and kills Cersei.
But if he does get zombified and then goes after Cersei likes the bad boys, and there's nothing badder than a Walking Dead thing. So yeah, I'm with you. I think he makes it, and I do expect maybe it's Brienne who takes the sword in his honor. What about Ghost? We saw Ghost pop up again last week. There aren't many left. Is he the last direwolf left at this point? Nymeria is out and about, out in the woods. That's Arya's. And I feel like such a nerd for knowing all of these names, but I've been watching the show again in preparation for the season. But do you think Ghost makes it?
I'm glad you kept talking there, because I'm like, who the heck is he talking about? Okay, the wolf. Okay, that's fine.
The white one.
Doesn't make it. No.
Yeah, I'm at like 60%.
60%. Yeah. Yeah, 60% is about right.
All right.
It very much like Brienne, dies saving Jon, something like that. Yeah.
What about one of the dragons? I put the over under at 0.5 dragons. Where are you?
I'm going to bet the over on that. Here's the thing. They have to have told, like, the guys who came down from the wall saw that there was a dragon with the Night King, right? Mm-hmm. Have we ever actually seen anyone say to Daenerys, "Hey, by the way, one of your dragons is with the Night King now"? That seems bad.
Bran did when
Brienne did? Okay.
Yeah, when like she and Sansa were gonna start bickering, and Bran's like, "We don't have time for this. You have, the Night King has one of your dragons. Okay. Let's just enough with the lady stuff. We've got to move." I think that was basically his gist.
Okay, I couldn't remember that, and I was ready for them to have the dragon fly up, and everyone be like, "What?" And like, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. Oh, my bad. Sorry."
Tormund was so focused on seeing Brienne again, he totally forgot about the ice dragon. Where's the big woman? Oh, also ice dragon. I forgot about that.
Oh, I knew there was something I forgot. Also, I didn't pick up milk on the way home. Son of a gun. Yeah, I think they're gonna lose one more dragon. Like they have to lose one more just for dramatic purposes, because at least one of the dragons is gonna die, and they can't kill the White Walker dragon yet, right? Because that would kind of remove a lot of the suspense. So yeah, I'm gonna say I'm going to say one dragon bites it this week. What do you say?
I'm going to go under. I'm going to say 0.0 dragons or 0.25. So now we get down to, I think, the last two, really. Bran and the Night King. Am I missing anybody important?
I don't think we've done Daenerys yet.
Well, I don't. No, we have not. And I didn't even write her down because I don't consider her a chance.
I don't think there's a chance.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think there's a chance she goes.
Or Cersei. I mean, she's not even there, so.
Yeah.
So we're at zero. Not zero, but Dany's going to make it. Cersei's going to make it. Where are you on Bran?
I don't think they can let him die based on how he set himself up last week. I don't think they can let him die, but I don't think we saw the Night King at the end of that episode when they showed all the other people on their horses, like at the last shot of the episode. I don't think we saw the Night King. So where's the Night King?
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on with him?
They want us to assume he's there, but they didn't show him there. And now everybody is wondering, like, is he even there? So I think Bran makes it. And the Night King, there's no way he could bite it this week, even though, this is the big battle. And there's going to be another battle, but eventually the battle goes to like King's Landing, right? Now, is that where the Night King is going to be? Is at, we don't know, Tom, but we'll eventually find out. But Bran and the Night King both make it this week.
I mean, you're going to have one episode at the end, which potentially they have defeated the White Walkers and the Night King, and then you have to sort out who's actually going to be on the throne. But you've got a couple more weeks of Night King at least. So yeah, I think it's close to a 0% chance that either of them die this week.
What about Jon's buddy from the wall, that the one still living? I don't know his name. I think he's. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, probably. I all the kind of ancillary characters, like, yeah, probably gonna go.
They're beaming down to the planet with Captain Kirk.
Don't get too attached to the Greyjoys, put it that way.
Oh yeah, what about Theon?
102%. Like I think he's gonna get it.
I didn't even put Sansa on here because she's gonna be fine. Right?
Yeah, probably. Unfortunately. Yeah.
Wow, Tom. I need to write a 5,000 word piece of my own about you.
See, I'm fine. I am fine with Arya. Sansa just sitting in your castle being catty. Like, no. Go out there and do something about it. Go be an Arya, don't be a Sansa. That's what I.
Is that what you tell your kids?
In all things, yes. go be an Arya, but do it before 9:00 because I need you in bed before the show starts.
Your daughter's like, a girl has no homework.
How about Samwell Tarly?
Oh,
he has to make it, right?
He has to make it. That's another one. Yeah, he makes it. And although, Jon's like, why don't you stay down in the crypt? And he's like, no, I'm the one who, I've killed White Walkers, I've killed Thens, I've done this, I've done that. So I don't know. Is that foreshadowing? Is that like reassurance that he's going to be okay? He has to make it. He's got a wife, he's got a kid, or, a lady friend and her kid. You can't. And the Tarleys have been through enough. All right. And right now he has to be that voice in Jon's ear saying, you need to get away from Dany. And not that he doesn't already know that, but he's the good angel on Jon's shoulder, and they can't lose him. And especially last week talking about where, how far they've all come and where they were when they met each other. You don't kill that guy, right?
On this show, never say never, but I did like the fact that Jon gets told this information and just absolutely just bumbles into telling her, like, no, you don't tell her. You know how she's going to react. And if you don't know how she's going to react, like, no one was surprised with how she reacted. Like, it wasn't like, oh, that's great news. Like, no, the woman who only wants to be the ruler of everything, like, no, she's not going to be happy. She's not like, it would not surprise me if she just, like, set him up at some point to bite it.
Yeah, it's not gonna end well for those two. But that's why he was avoiding her. He's like, I'm gonna I'll be down in the crypts. Don't tell anybody. I need to go like focus for battle and get ready. Psych myself up. I always do this. I can't be bothered by anybody, especially queens. And
hey, do you want to go, snuggle? No, aunt. I mean, oh boy, oh, this just got awkward. Oh no.
All right. So that's I think that's our Game of Thrones wrap up / listener questions for the episode. Stay tuned Sunday night at like 10:15 for our instant reaction podcast from this episode of Game of Thrones. What is the name of that show that we do? That fake show that our fake Game of Thrones recap.
Brown Thunder. Yeah, Brown Thunder works for this too. It's
Brand Thunder.
Yeah, Brand Thunder. There you go. I just looked at my recorder, and I had said to my wife before we started, like, this will be a quick one. I don't think we're definitely not going to go 2 hours. I'm like, oh no, well, turns out we went like half an hour on Game of Thrones, which, yep,
well,
that just as expected.
I'll throw all of the ads in the back part. That way, if you sat through it, you made it worth our while. So I think that's going to do it. It's going to be a big episode this week. Also, the Ohio State had some stuff going on. So thank you all for listening. And especially if you listen to this last part, even if it was just Brock Doctor, since he was the one who asked, maybe next time just ask us on Twitter and we can talk about it. That way we can save everybody else from having to deal with the show that nobody watches. So thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Well, she threw away the motel key. I wish it never meant nothing to me. Say well, now say well. Oh yeah. Say well, now say well. If you tell me that tomorrow's alright, we could steal a car and leave